Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Masters Tour Jönköping. We are going to be bringing you our quarterfinal number 3. I'm Raven, and joining me for this one is Gia, and we have just another exciting match coming up for you guys. It is going to be DeadDraw versus Wild Animal, as he is known, but also a name I struggled to pronounce, but DikiyZver, I believe, is maybe as close as I'm ever going to get, but he is referred to as Wild Animal across his streaming platforms and social media. But Gia, you're looking forward to this one. You've already cast today, but we've got plenty more coming up, right?
Definitely. And I did get the chance to cast Wild Animal yesterday, although I wasn't aware of the translation of his name. We were calling him Zver at the time because I did not want to attempt to pronounce properly in Russian. And there you can see his lineup. He did take the win over Baby Bear on stream yesterday, but now yet another tough opponent in DeadDraw, who is a fan favorite and a super consistent Masters Tour player.
Yeah, one thing that has interested me greatly, though, about this lineup specifically, it looks fairly standard of Warrior, Demon Hunter, Warlock as the choice, and then the Rogue. But the Rogue is built in a pretty different way. There's the Stealth package in there, but then still 2 Devoted Maniacs and 2 Faceless Corruptors, along with the Alexstrasza at the top. And although I like the Alexstrasza, I do worry that the Faceless Corruptors and Devoted Maniacs might be a bit of a weakness in his list. But again, he is here, right? So, something's been going right at least. And then we see his opponent, DeadDraw. Really looking forward to seeing play today, as he has a lot on the line, as a lot of these players still do, with potential spots at Grandmasters up for grabs.
That's right. And DeadDraw has a Rogue of his own, also running a couple of the Stealth package. Actually, not the package. It's just Spy Mistress, and then he has the secrets alongside Questing Adventurer. The Adventurer being the notable cut from Wild Animal's list. And we've been singing the praises of the Questing, but you did say that Wild Animal made it this far, so maybe having that potential to spike a free Alexstrasza, taking a leaf out of Quest Warlock's book from those Galakrond effects or from the Wondrous Wand off Togwaggle could be a huge factor for DeadDraw to consider. But here we can see DeadDraw's achievements. We showed it at the beginning of the stream, and it can't be emphasized too much, I would say.
It's just insane, isn't it? Like, there's not many other ways to describe it, because let's ignore the win rate, which is absurd, of course. Let's ignore he has the most career Masters Tour wins. But for here, some people might be a bit newer to competitive Hearthstone and go, oh, well, 4th, 5th place. Oh, in a normal esports tournament or whatever, that doesn't sound that good. It sounds okay. This is 4th and 5th in tournaments with literally hundreds of players in them, and he keeps just placing extremely high. And he is close to booking the spot in Grandmasters. I'd be very happy to see him there. But honestly, I think just these stats just speak for themselves. He is just one of the best players that just isn't a Grandmaster yet. And I say yet very specifically, because even if it doesn't happen right now, I am sure we are going to be calling DeadDraw a Grandmaster in the near future.
I think that is a very reasonable assumption. We saw him have those back-to-back top 8s last year in a different meta, in different tournament formats, and whether he was traveling to a different time zone or not. And now from the comfort of his home, up against Wild Animal, could be one of his last few hurdles to actually qualify to GM. We don't have the prize totals completely confirmed yet, so we can't speak in definites, but every single win from DeadDraw here is going to be huge. And also you have to keep in mind IROC, who is watching from the sidelines and is very worried about his potential slot being taken away from him. We're going to start off with the Demon Hunter mirror, and DeadDraw's hand is looking pretty good.
It really is. There's a few cards you're really looking for. Battlefiend, fantastic. Psychic, fantastic. I guess the one card you could argue he's missing, but if he had that, then he wouldn't have one of these others, is the Twin Slice, which is just so effective to just steal the early game initiative here for DeadDraw. But as you quite rightly said, a lot of his opening is fantastic, but Wild Animal's opening is not half bad either. Might even see the Coin Umberwing with the ability to Battle Master and Hero Power with that Umberwing next turn to try and really grab the board for himself, because that's what this early game Demon Hunter mirror is all about, right? Just whoever sticks the minions for more than a turn normally starts to have a great chance of closing out the game.
It is actually such a complicated early turn. You mentioned the Coin Umber, possibly Battle Mage plus Hero Power on the follow-up. Even Coin Umberwing bump into bump again, then re-equip another Umberwing was a possibility. But Wild Animal gonna give himself the most opportunities to be flexible by holding on to the coin. That top deck, though, for DeadDraw was amazing.
Yeah, pretty much the best card in the opening hand is the Demon Hunter Mirror. And I said, oh, you know, you could argue that's the card he's missing. Just draw it off the top when you need it. Why not? Fantastic start here for DeadDraw. And this is now going to be the uphill climb here for Wild Animal to fight back.
Yeah, even as early as now, looking like he doesn't have a great way to answer this Battle Fiend. However, he can soften up the beaming sidekick, and I feel like it already looks like try to hold on until he can coin out this glaive bound type of game plan, because the 1/1 board that he develops is so easily cleaned up by already the Battle Fiend on board and the second slice that he knows is in hand for DeadDraw.
And that's the trick, isn't it? With this Umberwing, he can at least set that up, right? Because he does, as you say, you know, he doesn't need, say, the twin slice that DeadDraw had, because these Umberwings are going to activate this Glaive Bound Adept. So that's going to be pretty nice in the near future. But the problem is it going to be just too late? Because yes, Wild Animal can say, okay, Glaive Bound this Battle Fiend eventually. Well, I don't think DeadDraw's going to pass the next couple of turns, right? At least that we can see. So it's going to get progressively more difficult,
yes.
or at least not as impactful a Glaive Bound Adept as maybe Wild Animal wants it to be.
Yeah, we saw Wild hold on to both charges of the Umberwing there. I was at first very surprised that he chose to hold on, but I guess he was looking at following up with his Satyr Overseer instead of a second Umberwing, in which case he would need both of the charges in order to follow up with the coin Glaive Bound. However, that line of thinking, I think, probably helps him on average, but it turned out DeadDraw's follow-up was just the best with his own Satyr Overseer, and Wild Animal is falling behind really quickly. Still no answer to the Battle Fiend, which is just going to keep growing, and the I-Beam just makes DeadDraw's life so easy here.
Yeah, and although DeadDraw hasn't had access to, well, until now, to the weapons this game, just the Twin Slice has been enough, right? To keep these attacks going, keep his opponent off the board. And now he does have that Umberwing. I still think it's reasonable to pass here and just I-Beam this down and keep this turn as straightforward as possible.
Yeah, I would agree. I would like to see him send his face into the 2/2 and then drop down the I-Beam. There's maybe a world where you think you're so far ahead that you don't even need to drop down the Battle Mage, because the way you lose from here is some insane altruist swing.
Well, what about trade the 2/2 then and play Umberwing? Yeah. How about that? If you don't want to I-Beam or drop anything else down, I don't mind this at all.
Okay. If the only worry right here is the Altruist, then I think you would much rather have the I-Beam in hand than trying to take down the Altruist with more face damage, for example. So that was very, very disciplined there from DeadDraw. I think, personally, in that spot, I would have gotten carried away and tried to maximize the face damage, but he's covered all his bases here. And now Wild Animal has held onto this coin for the Glaive Bound, but it looks like it's not going to be enough.
It's not, and this is the problem. We were talking about coin Glaive Bound, 2 turns ago? Just to kill the Battle Fiend, and as we said, that problem might not be as big a problem as some other minions right now. I do like the I-Beam hold, though, as you were saying from DeadDraw. I think you've never not got a target for I-Beam, right, in this matchup, and if you haven't, well, you're probably winning anyway. So it seems pretty good here, and it's going to be still that Glaive Bound coming out to deal with the Battle Fiend, but there's just so much more damage coming against him, and now double I-Beam. Why not?
I would argue that's actually a pretty bad draw for DeadDraw here. If he's already in this mindset where your only hope the only way you lose is a big altruist swing, then he would have wanted to draw himself something that doesn't get caught in the altruist. And we can see it's still a possibility for Wild Animal to top deck. A Twin Slice here could change the landscape of this game. Of course, he would still be at a very scary health total, but he would finally have his grip on the board. And you can see that's exactly what DeadDraw is worried about. Oh, not quite.
No, Wild Animal needed about 2 more turns, maybe, to catch up, to be able to do something reasonable with this Altruist, but it's just not going to be good enough.
Digging for his own I-Beam. Still has 2 Crimson Sigil Runner in there alongside 1 Spectral Sight. This is the Turbo Cycle list that doesn't run the Vilperas, and unfortunately just fell too far behind. The blazing, the Battle Fiend just got so much damage in the early game. But even though DeadDraw seemed in control that entire game, I really like to see that he was holding on to some resources and not getting blown out by a possible Altruist.
Yeah, I like it a lot, and I think this is something. The more we get to see from DeadDraw, and the more everyone gets to watch him, you don't get those kind of stats in long, drawn-out tournaments like Masters tours, whilst being a little bit inconsistent, right, and making strange decisions. I think just always just sticking to creating the highest chance at winning the game is pretty difficult to do. And although it sounds quite straightforward, like of course you should always try and do the plays that win the game. Sometimes you can slip and think you can be either too aggressive or you can play a little bit too defensively and not set up those either lethals or throwaway tools like we mentioned. Maybe that I-beam earlier would have just been classed as throwing away the card for not a real benefit when he had the opportunity to trade. So I do like it overall from DeadDraw, and that does mean he's going to go 1-0 up, winning the Demon Hunter mirror. So he's going to have a Druid and Rogue left over versus the whole selection of Wild Animals lineup. And again, this is, for me, just the Rogue list, Gia.
Yes. Sorry to backpedal your point, but I really wanted to double down on how you mentioned that it can be difficult to optimize your play there for DeadDraw because he was that far ahead, and sometimes in that mental space, you get into a thing where you're like, oh, what's the only way I lose? I better play around that. And if you tunnel on that, sometimes you forget easy, more common ways that you can lose the game, which is your opponent just goes for enough time that you gave them to wrestle back the board. But I think in DeadDraw's case in the previous game, didn't leave any room for error. And now it's on Wild Animal to try and take a win with the Demon Hunter. I'm still liking Demon Hunter in this matchup, but I don't think it is quite so far above 50% than before.
Yeah, and not when DeadDraw gets this opening, right? Spy Mistress is just a one drop that I think we mentioned it. It's like a delayed removal spell, right? It's just a one drop that kills any minion that Demon Hunter can play, even if it's sidekicked. It's one dagger away, right? Most of the time from just getting the kill. So it's so powerful the fact that DeadDraw can land this now. And there's even follow up. Hanar again, not really to just combo with secrets right now, but just as a 1/4 Seal Fate to follow that up as well to help with a potential Satyr. It's all looking good already for DeadDraw.
It's just a great curve, and Wild Animal has not hit a premium one drop. I was pretty curious there from DeadDraw that he threw away Praise Galakron, even though he would guaranteed have a target for it on turn 2, given that there's no way to interact with this Spy Mistress on the other side this early on in the game. But DeadDraw something a little bit more proactive, and he got it, and that's what he wanted. The Edwin also, if the Hanar sticks, we could just see him shadow step the Hanar, replay it into a 6/6 Edwin next turn.
Yeah, I really like it, honestly, because, again, there's just this early stage against Demon Hunter. Wild Animal doesn't really have, especially with this opening, or lack of opening, I guess, it's not really a great way to deal with this Van Cleef, and it's also uncommon that this Hanar's going to die. So DeadDraw doesn't even have to worry about doing something maybe a little bit strange and say Shadow Step in the Spy Mistress next turn, because this Hanar's just probably not going to go. It's going to dagger though and hold off.
Well, DeadDraw still has that Spy Mistress, as you mentioned, as a Shadow Step target. And I guess in terms of added benefit after the Shadow Step, even though the Spy Mistress does at least get re-stealthed after attacking. I'm curious to know what he values the dagger for in terms of immediate tempo compared to a 1/4. I tend to think that the 1/4 could be more helpful. But in this case, with the Seal Fate, he does get a very easy answer for the Battle Fiend.
Yeah, and this is something I think we were talking about yesterday, or at least some point this weekend. Maybe even last weekend. All this Hearthstone's rolling into one, Gia. But just players seem to be a little bit more often now going for slower Van Cleefs that are just more
Is it cold in the
what's the word I'm looking for? More consistently, like bigger Van Cleefs, right? Instead of going maybe all in on a 6/6, if they just wait a few turns, that 10/10 is enough to make a difference in the actual matchup, as opposed to just going, okay, 6/6 now, hope it gets to attack once or twice, but it probably gets traded into pretty quickly. And I think we're going to see this from DeadDraw as well. The Seal Fate, now if he wants, he can activate Miscreant, and then going into turns 5 and 6, he can make a very scary looking Van Cleef.
He could go for the 8/8 right now and still get rid of the 4/3. It does mean that you're not getting any battlecry value off of the Witchy Lackey, but it's a consideration. As far as the threats from Wild Animal's side of the board, though, I don't think it is particularly scary. So I think this is also fine from DeadDraw to hold on a little bit longer and go for exactly what you were talking about, is a bit greedier but more durable. Edwin's, oh my gosh.
I was just, it's like he read my mind. I was just about to say, and if he gets even one Kobold Lackey or even a Rush Lackey as well, the fact he has Shadow Step, not only is he going to make a huge Edwin, but he can just pick apart almost any board the Wild Animal's going to play. It's insane.
This is just the dream for Rogue. However, we can see from Wild Animal's hand that there is an Altruist, 2 fully loaded Twin Slices on either side. This is probably not the turn to go for it. However, if he doesn't rip it and then instead deviates with something like the Chaos Strike, there's a chance that the other Twin Slice gets locked. I do think, though, that for Wild Animal, there's an opportunity to wait until Altruist is the second from the leftmost card in the hand, which is to say that he goes Glavebound on the follow-up and then rips a guaranteed 4 slices.
It's going to be interesting, though, isn't it? Because although for a value and getting the most out of your cards, I like the plan, I don't know if it's going to be good enough. And we even see Wild Animal just deviate right now, right? He went for the Chaos Strike, draw a card. Oh, hang on a minute. You know, this is a Sata, okay. Now he used the coin to put it out just so his board is a little bit more aggressive. Because if he didn't, that was going to look like a very subpar turn.
Right. I was wondering if that was already a coin Glavebound turn. He could have activated it with a Twin Slice and gotten rid of the Miscreant, but I think that he's still hesitant to be throwing out the Twin Slices because of the Altruist. It's just that it doesn't work out very cleanly, right? Because this means the next turn is going to be Glavebound and he has to use a Slice anyway. But yeah, this is just
I guess it might not be, right? Depending on what's drawn next turn. If he gets a 1-drop, he can still pull it all off.
I mean, he's going to need something amazing.
He's going to need it. Yep. He's going to need something pretty strong. That looked like an eye beam.
Okay.
Okay. So that's 3, 4.
He can kill the Van Cleef, but it involves face tanking.
I think he's very okay with this.
Yeah? He takes back the board. The 4/4 gets cleaned up in the process. Unfortunately, I think he has to order it. Okay, he could miss 1 damage, I think, off Altruist procs in order to heal up 3 extra from the I-Beam. So
that's not is it?
It would have been because he still gets to face tank. But then he misses 1 damage to face that way, I believe. Whoa!
Oh, okay.
Wow.
I'll be honest. Didn't see it coming. Did not see that coming. I guess he's relying on the fact that in a lot of worlds, the Van Cleef has to trade into the Altruist, because if there's a skull, then does he just die? Obviously, we can see that there's a Kobold Lackey, and and the fact that there was 2 Lackeys in hand, there was good chances that there's Rush Lackey, Kobold Lackey could have dealt with that. So
I have to agree.
I always respect a face plan, but that was adventurous is the word I'm gonna use.
Yes. I am gonna straight up say I did not like that from Wild Animal. Of course, we have this caster vision that there was an answer there, but it's not just the other Kobold, right? The 1 in 13 to have both Kobold. It was the another Seal Fate, another Backstab, or just another way to generate a Lackey. And given that even if you go face there as Wild Animal, you don't have lethal in hand, I think either game plan revolves around you top decking Skull at some point, and I think that removing the minion that deals 10 every turn gives you more time to get to that Skull.
Yep, I would agree with that. And the problem now is, although yes, he can clean up this Van Cleef with this Glavebound, the big issue is, well, there's kind of another Van Cleef on the board as well. So that turn gap, he took the same amount of damage, but it gave arguably some extra time, right? Just to build up that board. Although it could have looked like the same, but he would have been... Yeah, this is the issue for me, Gia. I don't think DeadDraw's health matters, right? And it's what you were saying. If you can't set up lethal, then maybe playing for the board was better. Demon Hunter can go late.
I mean, we did see Wild Animal had to respect now the Edwin, and there was no great answer for the questing, but this does at least make the turn not so straightforward for DeadDraw. The Kronks looks great to give him the Galakron on the surface, but then he doesn't have a great answer for the Glavebound. You don't want to be trading the questing into that. I think as Rogue, #1 priority is setting up a lethal on the following turn. Don't even give Wild Animal the time to look for the skull. And so I really like that he goes for this instead. And definitely sets up a 2-turn.
Yeah, this is just nice, isn't it? It's just clean. Not going to give any openings to Wild Animal, and most importantly, not going to... It's just the sense that if he had to do what he did to kill a Van Cleef, well, this question's safe, right?
That's game.
Well.
Best he can do is remove Hanar and heal back up to 11. But then...
he takes it, right?
Yeah, there's already 10 on board plus the dagger, even without the Hanar.
Yeah, and also just because he can't kill questing, you know your opponent will have 2 cards in hand minimum next turn, and even if 1 is played, right, it's still going to add 1 extra damage. So, and I think because he'd have 2, there was only Alex Straza that would have been a draw that would have been arguably unplayable. But now another win goes there to DeadDraw, and he's going up to a 2-0 lead. And this is what he wants, right? With a Grandmaster spot potentially up for grabs. If you just have this top 8 match, just a quick 3-0, move on with your next game, focus on the semi-final. It's a very, very good start to our day number 3 here at Masters Tour Jönköping. And it's all the work in the world now, isn't it, for Wild Animal, as he's got the whole lineup to go against Druid. And we see the power level of Druid, whether we've seen all this discussion of pros respecting the deck or not. A lot of people are bringing it, and it is getting wins, right? You know, people in this top cut have Druid, and maybe that's because so many people have Druid that someone has to win. But still, I think it's doing enough work to be warranted in the lineup.
That's right. Frodan brought up that even though Druid did not have a very good win rate in the overall stats, it's because it was dropping many games to particularly Demon Hunter. And a lineup with Druid, I think, if you're not running the Dragon version, tends to ban Warrior instead, and you probably fall prey to the Demon Hunters at least once. And then you take a win against the other classes because Druid has a pretty good win rate across the board outside of those top 2 classes. Right. And so it will be difficult, of course, for DeadDraw to get a Druid through the Demon Hunter for Wild Animal, which is on its 3rd try to get a win. But across 3 chances, I think I'm liking DeadDraw's odds.
Yeah, and looking at this opening hand once again, not terrible to go against this Demon Hunter. I have been liking what I've seen of Claw this weekend. It's the first time I've really, seen it in a competitive situation, put in a lot of work. The Crystal Power's there as well, but I don't know if that's a keep. But what do you think here, Gia? Do you think Claw is a keep, or do you think this is a full throw for, to ramp the card draw?
I think if you do keep something, it is the Claw over the Crystal Power, because Crystal Power can be used for greater healing later on. And I like keeping just one of them, because it's this curious interplay that when you're going second as Druid, you do want to keep removal because you expect a 1-drop on the play from the other side. Then your turn 1 is Claw, then your ideal turn 2 is Fungal Fortunes. So I like that from DeadDraw. However, no good 1-drop play for Wild Animal. He's just been getting really unfortunate draws with Demon Hunter so far.
I got you, friend.
Yeah,
that's the welcome side, though.
It's not been looking very clean. He's definitely had the work to put in with this deck so far in this series. But now, no ramp here for DeadDraw. No draw either. So it's so difficult to talk about card draw from a player who's called DeadDraw. It's just a lot of the same word. But now he has to work out whether he wants to create the minion with Rising Winds, whether he wants to just draw as much as possible to try and get to some of those Power Spike cards, or whether he wants to consider starting to remove some of this board, or at least chip away at it.
Yeah, had the 2-4 been within range of the Claw, I think that was definitely a consideration for DeadDraw, but because the only easily removable minion was not very threatening at all, I like that he prioritized card draw here and over creating a minion, because he knows that the 3-2 is at the very least just going to be removed by hero power and trade of the beaming sidekick. He would much rather look for something proactive, and he got it from the Glowfly.
Yeah, now he's just going to get to a point where he can play a Glowfly that's quite impactful, right? Because I think this is where a lot of the matchup is make or break. If you get a Glowfly that's pretty wide, and then your opponent does not have a Warglaves, it looks so much better than if they do have a Warglaves, right? So it's pretty tough. And with double Mount Seller in hand, that is actually, although generally not a bad thing, it's a little bit rough with Glowfly for now because it's effectively minus 2/2/2s.
Yes. And that's why we saw from DeadDraw holding back on the claw, even though he could have fit it into that turn to remove also the beaming sidekick. He's concerned about how many flies he can actually generate, but he couldn't just hold on to everything as well because the 4-2 was far too threatening, and it's a huge deal that the second one was there, and he whiffs again on a spell. That is all 3 minions in the deck. This is not the dragon version with the extra Emerald Explorers. Yikes.
I was just going to say, well, it's unlikely he draws the last minion, right? And then he did.
It's just 4 flies. It doesn't even challenge the board that already exists. And yeah,
I think it might just be worth removing.
Yeah, I completely agree. The Glowfly ship has sailed at this point. I think he is just going to have to pray for some more stall on the following turn, leading up to a Mount Seller. I think he does need Fungal Fortunes off the top to help. I mean, the upside of drawing all the minions is that your Fungal will never whiff, right?
That's true, yeah. I always got to look for those silver linings here, though, for Wild Animal. It's not looking too bad, actually. You can set this up pretty nicely with this cane to make the skull end up on the guaranteed outcast for next turn. So not only is he putting on the pressure now and having some quite difficult to remove minions, he has the gas, right? He can just play skull next to it and keep this pressure up. And with no ramp and a very mediocre Glowfly, DeadDraw's in trouble.
It is just not there for DeadDraw. Not quite lethal this turn yet for Wild Animal, but have your skull on the right side too if you like.
Oh. Yeah, and you play that one, right? Just to make sure the other one's always active.
And also for that upside benefit of the top deck BM.
That's true. The mental warfare.
Well, he can
just
create
wonder how much
board
he's
space
gonna trade,
if
right?
he likes by trading away a 1-2. I think that's the only reason for trading is that he can't actually get all the minions on board unless he removes one thing from his board. Because I assume he's going to want to play sidekick on his Battlefiend.
Oh, funny. Okay, yeah. I was trying to work out where I'd place it because I couldn't decide between the Cane or the Shadow Weaver, actually.
Oh, okay.
Only because they represent the most damage right now for the Shadow Weaver.
Sure.
And the Cane, 7, just doesn't die to double Bog Beam, right? Which I know isn't active, as in 0 mana now, but it's still castable. And I guess it's really just him making sure that something sticks. And again, with taunts potentially coming out from a Mount Seller, even if it's coin Mount Seller like double Moonfire or something, then you know, at least there's a way there for Kane to live and just ignore them anyway.
Sure. I was looking at buffing the Battlefield to get a value trade here, but I mentioned on only 6 natural mana, pretty much all of Wild Animal's concerns are made up in his head. It is that very wild world you mentioned of the Moonfires into double taunts, and I think he still gets through anyway, even if. And there you have it. First win on the board for Wild Animal. However, I think DeadDraw shouldn't be too upset about that. You generally expect that matchup to go in favor of DH.
Yeah, and that's where, as you were alluding to a little bit earlier, where we talk about win rates of, you know, class versus class, archetype versus archetype, you do really have to just all round look at the lineup win rates as well, right? And hopefully once this tournament's over, we'll get some of these magical people on social media to just post some of these incredible amounts of data on actual lineup win rates, because that's something I'm very interested in seeing. Because like Frodan was talking about, yeah, you might lose a couple of games with the Druid, but if it has some very strong matchups like this one, then yeah, if it gets the win anyway, then who cares if you win 3-0 or 3-2? Other than saving yourself a bit of time, it's still going to be the same result, right?
That's right. Between both of the remaining classes for Wild Beast, disregarding the archetypes at least, Druid's win rate seems to be positive as of this tournament Swiss portion. That's a pretty large sample size. Looking over at the class win rates in Swiss, Druid had 55 on Warlocks and 53 on Rogue. And looks like by that metric, Wild Animal's going to try and get his tougher matchup out of the way. I'd argue, though, that the Rogue of his particular build would be the tougher one in this case because he's not got the questings.
Maybe, yeah. Questions do pose quite the problem to Druid right now, but we'll see if we can get it done with this Warlock. Let's just take a look at the list. I'm enjoying the evolution of Wild Animal's name, though, because for a second there, he was Wild Beast.
Oh, sorry.
So
yeah.
it's just I'm just waiting for what the next one is going to be from us all, because it's one of those weird mental hurdles, right? Because we're looking at a name on screen, but it's not the name he is mostly known by. That's just his actual battle tag name, which is why we use it.
Okay, before I react to this completely undead draw from DeadDraw, I will say that I was looking at YouTube chat the other day, and some of the Russian community were very nice to say that the translations for Wild Animal's names were either Wild Animal or Wild Beast, so I think they're both acceptable. Okay. In any case, though, DeadDraw kept the Wild Growth and Mount Seller right off the bat. It doesn't curve as cleanly into each other as the Overgrowth into Mount Seller, but I still think it is very reasonable to hold on to that. And oh my gosh, he has Overflow as well. Doesn't need it to worry about not getting cards.
It's just the hand, isn't it? Honestly,
yes.
Like I don't really know. There were. I don't even know if there were, I say, discussions over whether Fungal Fortunes is better here. But I think with this in hand and with the Overflow draw, I mean, okay, well, whatever. Do what you want, DeadDraw. Fine. If you're just gonna draw every single perfect card. Insane. This is gonna make this game incredibly difficult for Wild Animal here, because not only is it a tough matchup, but it's a tough matchup in which your opponent is drawing just the curve.
Yeah, you covered everything. I was gonna say you would rather have Overflow than Fungal, but he doesn't even need to worry about those options. However, he still does have to take the turn to fill up the hand, and then at that point, Wild Animal might be able to go for the plot twist, get closer towards that quest completion, and maybe hit a timely Caledon, timely Twisting Nether. However, I think it requires the Warlock to get very lucky from this point, as opposed to Druid. Basically, any draw would be backbreaking at this point.
And what did you think there, Gia? Because there was a couple of options. Although Overflow is fantastic, we saw it early on. He could have actually gone Fungal into Glowfly and put forward at least one board against Wild Animal here. And what do you think of why he went for Overflow instead of that Fungal Glowfly turn?
Well, I think between the possibility of Glowfly just dying to a Crazed Netherwing and the ability to set up for almost a guaranteed good Mount Seller board, because you just draw 5 cards and they tend to be cheap spells, I would definitely take the turboed out Mount Seller. And then this actually allows him the time to be greedy with the Glowfly and wait for his Soul of the Forest to pair with it, make that board threatening as well for Wild Animal, who, by the way, has drawn his second plot twist off of the first one, so he could finish the quest right now.
Yeah, and it's something we see from a lot of, I think, good Warlock players right now, where they are almost going all in on card draw, right? It is, and that maybe makes it sound negative, but it's not. But we've seen players realize that in certain matchups, you need to do the broken things, right? You need to be tapping for 0 mana cards as early and as often as possible to win these hard matchups. So again, I like this. There were other options here for Wild Animal, but I like just saying, no, I got the second plot twist, I'm getting the quest done right now, and from turn 6, I'm going to be tapping 0 mana cards every single turn, or at least mostly every single turn.
It's absolutely huge. Both of the players have hit their ideal starts. In most situations, I would say the Druid ideal start still beats the Warlock ideal start, but I'm not sure if it beats magical 0-cost cards. If he hits a huge Malagos, Twisting Nether, Caledon, and the Mount Seller turn for DeadDraw is actually not quite so insane as I first thought, because he had not hit Bog Beam nor Iron Bark, and so we could see him dig for them with the Fungal Fortunes.
Yeah, that's what's interesting as well, right? He actually used a Bog Beam last turn to kill off the 2/3, right? Pressing Explorer. So he did actually forego one of those cards, but I think with this Innovate and having the Fungal Fortunes, then it was looking to try and do this anyway. Just a reminder, there are Moonfires in this list too that he could have drawn to further increase his power on board.
He was just looking to not overdraw there, but unfortunately couldn't avoid it this turn. Wait a second.
I like that Alex is drawn for 0. Is he dead?
Not quite, but he's got 8 damage in hand. Right. Oh, but the Alex is the only dragon in hand. If he plays it first, then the Nether Breath doesn't become active. However, I think for Wild Animal here, it's looking to just be a stall turn. I don't think he wants to expend 2 removal spells to get rid of the Mound Cellar.
What do you think of Moab, Nether Breath, Alex?
Into the Alex. Yeah, I like it.
I like it a lot because you know what? Yes, DeadDraw can heal. Who cares? That's an 8/8.
Correct.
Right? Like, there is a level of respect that's required for just an 8/8 dropped onto the board. So I do actually like this play from Wild Animal. It looks a little bit strange. You know, he had, for example, Dark Skies as well that he could have considered. But I think priority 1, kill Mount Cellar, so the board doesn't keep getting larger on average. Priority 2, make DeadDraw sweat a little bit. And, you know, I like it. Just drop the Alex down, take advantage of these 0 mana cards.
Completely agree. However, even though that was a huge swing in tempo in Wild Animal's favor, DeadDraw has a great response. He can play these Glowflies and Soul of the Forest. Yes, he doesn't get all the flies because the taunts are in the way, but I think he needs to not sacrifice these taunts into the Alex, because that's the way he loses, right? If the Alex can connect face at this point. At the same time, there's a problem of you need to kind of remove the Moarg in that situation. So you're taking double trades, putting both of the bears down to 1 HP. So a Rain of Fire from the other side could be disastrous. This play is not without its risks, but I like that he's making Wild Animal have it. And if he doesn't, it's just a roar for lethal.
This is very interesting, yeah, because I was just going to say, with that Moarg down, Raven, he could have just Wrathed.
So, I mean, the Rain and the Alex is 9 damage. Their Soulfire is 13. He could start with the Mortal Coil. The Zephrys is active? There's no way that's active. What? How is that active? So
13
now,
cards in the deck.
Now this is just lethal as long as the Soulfire doesn't discard Zephrys.
It's not that. It's lethal with Wind Fury.
Oh yeah,
you're right. Just get Wind Fury on the Alex, right? Just game, no taunt.
You're right.
Yeah, this is... Oh, what a tap.
What? How does that even happen? Oh my gosh.
What a game. And this is where, you know, we can see this is lethal. So Wild Animal is going to even this series up 2-2. But this is where I'll kind of finish the point I was working towards a bit earlier, was with the Moarg down, like just the Wrath and a Crystal power would have just killed the Alex, right? And I 100% get the setup for, say, counter-lethal, but I just wonder if the game just continued, doesn't DeadDraw just win anyway? He can just Glowfly Soul next turn, and then that's just as difficult to remove. And he could have even used Crystal Power to heal and cleared, you know, a slightly different way. So I do wonder, with that Moarg buffing his spells so much, one Wrath would have dealt 6 to that Alex. He trades a bear in, and then he just does his Glowfly Soul of the Forest next turn. I think as the game goes on, his full hand was more than enough to beat Wild Animal there in that matchup. So again, it's easy to say now in what we saw the outcome was, which was also insane, by the way. But I do just wonder if that was a bit of a risk that, or a lethal setup that DeadDraw just didn't really need to take.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. Again, hindsight is 2020, but we were talking about this at the beginning of the series when he was in a great position that he didn't need to take any risks as Demon Hunter. He could hold on to that I-beam. And now there was a situation where it's really razor thin, the margin between giving your opponent an extra turn by taking a full turn off of the Glowfly plan and just removing. Maybe they develop an Abyssal Summoner then, and then you have to keep removing, and then it looks kind of bad. I don't know. But I will say that outcome for Wild Animal was absolutely insane. He was looking to be on the back foot from the beginning of this series, but now it's coming down to a Game 5. DeadDraw already with a great opener. it still looks pretty dicey for Wild Animal.
Yeah, but suddenly it looks a lot better, doesn't it, from it did not too long ago. DeadDraw was 2-0 up in this series, and now it's all coming down to this game. Just a reminder for you guys, maybe just tuning in. This is single elimination top 8. If you lose, you are done. There is no Swiss rounds anymore. There's no, score tiebreakers. All that long gone. If you lose, you're done for the day, and you're done for the tournament.
And there's especially a lot online for the EU region because the slots for GM are still up for grabs. DeadDraw has drawn a perfect opener outside of discarding the Ysera, I guess, but he had the fungal into the wild growth. And in most situations, the Glowfly next turn will get him 6 tokens. It's huge.
Yeah, it's one way we can see him get ahead on here, and there's one thing I have been seeing a sprinkling of Waste Wardens in some rogue lists for this tournament, but I believe I will just triple check to make sure I'm not being silly. But yeah, Wild Animal does not run a Waste Warden in his list. He's a little bit more old-fashioned there.
There's just not a lot of answers for Wild Animal. He even coined out a Devoted Maniac because his curve was looking to play another Maniac into the shield, into Praise Galakron, and in many other matchups. I would call Wild Animal to be in a great position just because of the continuous invokes, but I don't think it's getting there against this double roar from DeadDraw.
Yeah, and I don't want to say this, but it does make me laugh when a game is just minions, double roar, next. It's just so silly that even though, again, it's not something I want to happen to me all the time, but it is pretty crazy.
This is not lethal from what I'm counting.
If you double roll, but you have to trade.
24,
so
yeah. It's 24 max that can go face, and so I would like to see him instead cash in perhaps 1 roar, and then use a crystal power to get rid of this Devoted Maniac. It's definitely 1 mana off lethal.
Oh yeah, what if he just glow flies though? Crystal power and then just glow fly, fill up the board.
Even more?
It's an extra 3 minions.
Okay. You said there's no Waste Warden, so...
Yeah, there's no Waste Warden, and then just have double Savage Draw for next turn.
Sure.
Because we saw that...
using a roar this turn probably actually is the way he loses, right? We could see him go for this play instead, which is still 2 minions.
Yeah, true. Yep, this works in a similar fashion, but gives him a potential backup Glowfly. This is probably just better, honestly.
Right,
because with the overflow in hand, he doesn't need the Rising Winds to draw. So yeah, shock horror to everyone's surprise. DeadDraw's just better than me.
And me.
Yeah.
Your play was better than mine as well. I was saying 1 roar preemptively, and that's the way he potentially gets punished, right? If the board is cleared and then the other roar is done in hand, and then he has to play from behind with the second Glowfly. But now it's looking like there's no answer left for Wild Animal. All the Lackey generations are too expensive. The Lackey he currently has is I was gonna say the out is try to generate Faceless Lackey and Ethereal Lackey, and then get your Faceless to generate Thelnos, and then get a Fan of Knives, but that's just not possible with the mana.
Yeah.
So it's
a lot to ask that. I think we'd have to call an admin if something like that actually happened. Here though, and this is the problem, there's good cards in hand for dealing with this board, but as you just pointed out, not all at once. So Wild Animal doing a good job here.
Yeah.
But we can see that's not going to be good enough, and I really like this. Just go that little bit wider for DeadDraw, set up just as awkward, if not more of awkward a board for Wild Animal to deal with, and I believe if those Savage Draws are getting locked in, I am not even going to count. Pretty sure that's going to be good enough.
Yes, indeed. Exact lethal. I guess you just cover up the Iron Bark. It wasn't there. It was exact. That was very clean from DeadDraw there, and he advances to the semifinals, puts himself in a great, if not guaranteed, spot to make it into EU GM. Of course, we have to double check on that, but he is definitely one of the front runners going into this, and now he is just that much farther. Now a minimum of $15,000 added to his prize total.
Yeah, and that does mean that Wild Animal is going to be knocked out, but still a fantastic result, hitting top 8 there in this Masters Tour. So great job for him, definitely putting his name a bit more on the map for everyone to remember, when I no doubt know we'll see him in future Masters Tours. But yeah, I've got to be happy for DeadDraw on a personal level. I think he's a great player. I think it'd be great to get into Grandmasters. But honestly, I think what's important now is he just goes and does whatever he needs to do to just relax, because I think that would have been a very intense match for him, looking great 2-0, and then suddenly you at last game and it could all just slip away. But again, congratulations for him. Does mean that Pignus and Monsanto is going to be coming up as our last quarterfinals match. Pretty exciting already, just getting those semi-finals. And one more reminder as well, Gia, is at the end of this day, if you do stick around, we will get to see who makes it into that GM, right?
Yes, I am so excited to see how it finally shakes out, at least for EU, because NA and APAC are pretty much all but locked up. And we could have, depending on who takes it in this next series between Piñas and Monsanto, halfway split between Americas and EU, or it could be yet another mostly EU dominant top 4. No matter which way you slice it, I'm sad because there's no APAC, but I definitely respect all of these players, and commiserations to Wild Animal dropping out in top 8. Nothing to scoff at. That's still 11 Gs to his prize pool, and I'd say a pretty good performance all throughout.
Yeah, completely agree. That was quarterfinal number 3 done, and we have quarterfinal number 4 coming right up. So don't go anywhere, and we're going to continue Masters Tour Jönköping.